Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. So Eli Manning has announced his retirement from the NFL, from the New York Giants after 16 seasons, two-time Super Bowl champion, two-time Super Bowl MVP, four-time Pro Bowler. Very good career. He's not a Hall of Famer. I'm going to break all that down. But first, I want to give a shout out to the video sponsors, Bosses Ranch. Phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal product. Central Texas, check them out. HEB, cold produce section. Best darn ranch in all of Texas. I'm proud to be partnered up and promoting a tremendous product. So some of you be wondering, saying, oh, well, of course the Cowboys fan doesn't feel that Eli Manning is an MVP. Of course, it's been one of the talking points today across social media, across the sports media, airwaves, and talk radio and all that. And it's been debated for a while whether or not Eli Manning, this day would come. And I've always, at least over the last few years when I saw his career winding down, I've always felt that he wasn't a Hall of Famer. But my first question is, and somebody maybe can answer this for me in the comments, what is the definition of the Hall of Fame and what does it mean? Because I actually was listening to Cowherd today and he was saying his case for Eli Manning being a Hall of Famer, you can't tell the story of the NFL without Eli Manning, which I believe is true. The Super Bowls, defeating the Patriots, beating the arguably the greatest team ever in the '07 Patriots, being a Manning, playing underneath those expectations, what he did in New York, and both of the, really it being centered around both of those Super Bowl runs. And I say that because if it's solely just about fame and what your name is attached to, what your name is, and you had some great moments, but was he a great player? I thought it was about people that were great players. I've never once thought Eli Manning at any point in his career was a great player, was a great quarterback. I had thought he had some very, very good seasons, especially in the late 2000s into the early 2000s when he won his second Super Bowl. Always thought he was very, very good. Never ever thought he was in the top 5 discussion at any time during his position. And you know what? We'll get into some stuff because not only do his numbers back up my argument, but accolades, awards, 4-time Pro Bowler in 16 seasons. You were Player of the Month, NFC Player of the Month, one time in your entire career, one time in 2008. I think he only won NFC Player of the Week 4 times. So put all that into context over a 16-year career, and now we're saying he's a Hall of Famer. And the reason why I bring all that up is because, for actually 2 reasons. Number one, we've had these stringent, guidelines on players that I thought were great, like a Charles Haley, and we've neglected them for years and pushed them out, made these arguments that they were very, very good, and some of them were great, but not great enough, or all this type of stuff. But now we lower the bar, we lower the expectations for this player and the criteria, right? And then when you get into the second aspect of that, it's, at what point could we ever say you were a dominant figure or you changed the game or the position? Because I love what Deion Sanders came out and said today about what the Hall of Fame, what he thought it used to mean to him in terms of, level of impact on the field over a sustained period of time. Did you do something that absolutely changed your position or the game? Yes, again, I mentioned earlier, Eli Manning had great moments, but he was not a great player. Okay. I'll start off with one of the guys he faced off against the most because we have to look at his peers, right? So immediately we think of, okay, Eli Manning came in 2004 NFL draft, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers. Immediately look at those 2 guys. Obviously, Ben Roethlisberger also has 2 Super Bowls, but I can make the argument, and a very solid one, that there have been moments in Ben Roethlisberger's career, not only is he better than Eli statistically and been a more efficient passer, but he's also been more consistent, maybe not injury-wise, but consistency and his stats are just, they trump Eli's. Eli consistently led the league in interceptions, I think 3 different times. He has almost as many times he led the league in interceptions as he does Pro Bowls. I mean, so now that's screaming Hall of Famer. If we want to go down the path of, well, we can't tell the story of the NFL without Eli Manning, that's why he's a Hall of Famer. So by that argument, I don't want to hear this come up when Marshawn Lynch is eligible. Because by that argument, you cannot tell the story of the NFL through the time that he played without Marshawn Lynch. If we even want to go more controversial, we can say we can't tell the story of the NFL without Cam Newton. At least at one point in Cam Newton's career, we could point to it. And 2 points. A, he was dynamite as a rookie, one of the first rookies to throw for over 4,000 yards as a passer. I think Andrew Luck did it the following year. And revolutionized the game in terms of being one of the bigger runners and the goal line presence and how he was holding up consistently when he was able to stay healthy before the injuries tore up his body. And he was the MVP in 2015, leading his team to the Super Bowl. Yes, he doesn't have the Super Bowls championships that Eli does. We'll get to that as well. But at least at some point in his career, I could say he was a great player, undoubtedly. If we even want to go more controversial, I can't tell the story of the NFL without Colin Kaepernick. So y'all not ready for that discussion, but that's fact. You can't tell the story of the NFL without Colin Kaepernick. Does that mean he's a Hall of Famer? I think not. I don't even have Cam Newton as a Hall of Famer. But all I'm saying is, if we're going to put Eli Manning in the Hall of Fame, then all these other people, you can start to make an argument for them looking at Eli's case. And that's the, you're opening up Pandora's box here. Tony Romo, in my opinion. Because when I say Tony Romo, Eli Manning didn't even dominate his own division. Forget the rest of the league, forget his peers, forget historical context of other great quarterbacks. He didn't dominate the NFC East. If anything, if you want to look at of the 3 central quarterbacks, because the Redskins were all over the map when everybody else had a quarterback, right? If you want to look at the 3 players in that 2000s period, it's Eli, it's Tony Romo, and it's Donovan McNabb. I can make the argument Donovan McNabb has a better case, right? And he's been eligible since, 2016? And I don't even hear people bringing up Donovan McNabb's name. Went to 4 or 5 NFC championship games, did go to the Super Bowl. Now, he didn't win the Super Bowls. He doesn't have the Super Bowl MVPs. He didn't get hot like Eli did, but he does have a 9-7 playoff record. Eli's playoff record is 8-4. Please keep in mind that outside of the 2 Super Bowl runs where Eli was a wild card in both, that's where he accumulated all 8 of his playoff wins for his entire 16-year career. He is 0-4 outside of that. So in the other 14 seasons, he never won a playoff game. No success there. Now, yes, he got hot. And you can't take that from Eli, and that's why we're having the debate. So I acknowledge that. I acknowledge the MVPs, albeit I would also say that in 2007, we all know they won the Super Bowl because of that defense, specifically that defensive line. Patriots coming in, averaging the amount of points they had. Tom Brady, Randy Moss, they were unstoppable. Even that brother, I was thinking about him, Lawrence Maroney, if y'all remember the name. And they shut all that down. The Giants did. Okay. Eli made some miraculous plays and we talk about the play to David Tyree where he catches on his head and Eli, throws people off his back and all of that. One of the reasons why I feel like that play gets talked about so much, not only just the context of when it happened and it was clutch, and Eli was a clutch player. That is a point in his favor. But I say that to say this. Tony Romo was back. I saw Tony Romo make plays like that once a month with the Cowboys, especially when our offensive line wasn't what it is today. Okay. So it was also the element of surprise that Eli Manning even was capable of that. Why? Because everyone knew then he was not a great player. It was surprising that he rose to that occasion. He did it twice. But I say this too. Let's say Joe Flacco ends up with the Chicago Bears next year, takes over after maybe he wins the starting job over Mitchell Trubisky. He takes over and he ends up, the Bears go 9-7. They're a wild card team out of the NFC North and they go on a run. He gets hot again just like he did with Baltimore 8 years ago. Because Joe Flacco has a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP if we're going to play that game, okay? Let's say Joe Flacco leads the Bears to a Super Bowl and wins MVP again. And now he's got 2-2. Is Joe Flacco a Hall of Famer? What about Nick Foles? Let's sub Joe Flacco's name out and put new. My thing is you cannot ground your entire argument around 2 4-game runs. Essentially 8 games is his case for the Hall of Fame. It's not fair to the players who were never even able to be in a position because of whether it was the organization, the team, and that goes back to Eli being a Manning, because many people have brought it today. If his last name was Morris, if his last name was Howard and not Manning, would he be up for the Hall of Fame? I think that does play a role in this, 100%. You know, when you look at the fact that how he even got to the Giants, his father specifically saying, no, I don't want you to play for the Chargers. Terrible organization. They're ruining players over there. No, thank you. Look at a guy who's a surefire Hall of Famer like a Drew Brees and how much he struggled in that organization. And then he goes to the Saints when they get Sean Payton. Organization gets stronger. Undoubtedly an MVP, one of the greats. We've actually been debating whether or not Drew Brees should have been NFL top 100 quarterback. That's the level that Drew Brees is on. And look at the records he's broken because he got out of that organization. But one of Eli's peers and a Phillip Rivers ends up going to the Chargers and in my opinion has been a better thrower of the football and been a little bit more consistent than Eli has, although Phillip sucked this year. But my point with Uncle Phil is at least I've seen him perform in his advanced age. He's still been a higher tier caliber. They're just now having the conversation about whether or not they need to, the fact that now they're at the point of ready to move on to get another quarterback. I can make the argument that Eli's held the Giants back and held them hostage for years. They haven't even been making the playoffs. At least Phil and them last year, they made the playoffs and won a playoff game in Baltimore just last season. So, and I think that if Phillip Rivers had gone to the Giants and everything else plays out in terms of the personnel moves and the strength of their organization versus the Chargers, then we're talking about Phillip Rivers with 2 championships, maybe 3 or 4, because I think he's a better quarterback than Eli, just from my eye. I think Eli probably doesn't win a Super Bowl with the Chargers. Maybe more, a little bit, I mean, we can argue durability, but Phil's been pretty durable, although he did play a couple years after. These are all things we have to take into consideration, right? When you look at historical context, I saw folks today, like a Marcellus Wiley on his show, bring up, well, Eli has better stats than Dan Fouts, Warren Moon, Joe Namath, and these are quarterbacks who are also in the Hall of Fame. And Joe Namath is the only other one that has a Super Bowl ring, which is valid as well in terms of if we're just looking at raw numbers. But that's looking at numbers, again, without context. If we apply this into context, now this is Steve's opinion here as well, but something happened after the 2003 AFC Championship game against the Colts and the Patriots when Marvin Harrison was kidnapped by Ty Law. The NFL decided to change the rules. They thought the product was bad. You have a high-flying Peyton Manning, family power, and them having some pull. I just told y'all Daddy took him away from the Chargers and put him in New York. So, hey, Marvin Harrison's over here getting kidnapped, and that's a whole other thing. NFL 100 put Marvin Harrison and that wide receiver over T.O. I don't ever remember T.O. getting kidnapped like that in a playoff game. But that's neither here nor there. Point is, Marvin Harrison gets kidnapped. Up until that point, DBs could play a certain style of football, play a certain way. Remember, there was a certain type. You look at the Eagles defense back then with like Bobby Taylor and Troy Vincent and those guys. It was a different, and those Jim Johnson defenses, that was different, right? NFL says, you know what? we got to open this up more. Guys can't play like that. So the passing numbers, also with the advent of, folks implementing more air raid type concepts and opening up the passing game, more of the Air Coryell concepts that ironically Dan Fouts was a part of, opens it up to the NFL, and we see the numbers and the proficiency now that we didn't see then. So we have to take that into account. And the reason why I say 2003, because I kind of separate those stats, right? So if you'd ever played in the modern day, what I consider from 2004 on, the modern day, which is when Eli was drafted. So his entire career has been post those significant rule changes, right? He should have better stats. He should, period. That's why I always say Dan Marino had the greatest season ever in 1984 when he had over 5,000 yards passing and 48 touchdowns, because he was doing that when you could assault wide receivers, and he didn't even have Hall of Famers. I mean, Clayton and Duper were good. And look, I'm young, and so I didn't see it live, but I've gone back and watched so many of those games. I've watched as many Marino snaps as I possibly could have because, technically from a quarterback standpoint, I thought he was nearly flawless as a player. However, you look at what he was up against during that time, having, throwing into tighter windows, DBs can harass wide receivers a lot more versus what we have today. And Eli's been able to play in this era, yet he still amasses the interceptions, Jameis-like interceptions, right? Years of losing. I haven't even brought up the fact that his career record is 117 to 117. He's a 500 career quarterback. These are just the facts, okay? When's the last time Eli made the playoffs? I mean, you're talking about a dude, bro, your Madden rating's been trash for the last 6 years. You haven't been, when's the last time Eli been hovering around 81 since like Madden 25? I mean, come on. And we're over here banging the table for him to make the Hall of Fame? It's because he's a Manning. He played in New York. I get it. My whole thing is this. If Eli Manning's in the Hall of Fame, Tony Romo should be in the Hall of Fame. Donovan McNabb should be in the Hall of Fame. Hell, open up to other positions. Marshawn Lynch is in, no question. Luke Kuechly, he's in. Cam Newton. Who else I got on here? Torrey Holt. Torrey Holt's not in the Hall of Fame, to my knowledge. Edgar and James not in the Hall of Fame. At least all those other names, Luke Kuechly, Patrick Willis, at least at some point in their careers, they were top 5 at their position. They were great players. Again, one time in Eli's career, NFC Player of the Month. Once. Never led the league in any category of positive, never led the league in passing yards, touchdowns, completion percentage, passer rating. Not once. And I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but if we go back, forget the peers for a second. Because going back to Deion's point about changing the game, changing the position, all those type of things. If we're going to put Eli Manning in the Hall of Fame, real rap, Randall Cunningham got to go in. Steve McNair got to go in. Steve McNair has an MVP in 2003 with Big Bro. Randall Cunningham, NFL All-Pro, one of the greatest dual-threat quarterbacks of all time. Look at the modern day NFL quarterback. Who does it more resemble? Does it more resemble Randall Cunningham or does it more resemble Eli Manning? If Eli Manning was at his prime, in his peak prime, arm strength is still there. He's got younger legs. He's got better footwork, all that. He's tougher. He's not as beaten up and he's not as old. Eli Manning, modern day, to me, is Matt Ryan. Now, Matt Ryan won an MVP. I believe in 2016? So that's what we're arguing and putting on the table here. And then, he's reinforced again by this 8-game run where the defense was amazing. And yeah, he made some plays. Throw to Manningham, one of the greatest throws of all time in NFL history. Again, I'm not saying you can't tell the NFL story without Eli Manning. But we need to have context because I believe the Hall of Fame should be for great players. And I can without a doubt, I can go to sleep every night and know that at no point in Eli Manning's career was he ever truly great. Not once. Now, if we're going to go on the, even as a fan, even as a Cowboys fan, when we had Tony Romo, and Tony Romo was, a big chunk of his career, and I know he didn't deliver to the level that Eli did in those big playoff moments, and I know folks will chime in the comments with that. That's fine. But as a fan, objectively, because I can say I've watched Eli Manning in my division every year, twice a year since I was a junior in high school. Never been afraid of the man. The only time I will say this. The only time I was really ever afraid of Eli was when he would randomly come back and spark us when we first opened up Cowboys Stadium before it became AT&T Stadium. That's the only kind of period of time where I felt like, because like I said before, he never dominated the division. We talked about 14 consecutive years and now 15 years in a row where we haven't even had repeat NFC champions. Both years he was a wild card team, meaning what? He didn't win the NFC East. Both of those years he won the Super Bowl, right? So, I mean, context. He got hot a couple times. Team got hot. Not just him. The team got hot. Things happen. Kyle Williams fumbles in the NFC Championship game on the 49ers, or else we're talking about Alex Smith. Guys, all these guys, Kirk Cousins, Alex, all these guys have superior numbers to Eli Manning as well, and played in the same passing era where passing stats are already inflated. We're aware of all this. But you can't, again, I'm going to keep saying it. You can't sit up here and tell me that he's a Hall of Famer, but we're leaving all these other dudes out. Was Eli Manning better at his position than Zach Thomas that used to play for the Miami Dolphins and the Dallas Cowboys at his? I would say no. I mean, I love Charlie Murphy to death. I'm going to make an analogy here real quick. I love Charlie Murphy to death. He made one of the greatest sketches of all time on Chappelle's Show. Had a great moment. He's not Eddie Murphy, though. You see the difference? Great moments doesn't automatically mean you're an all-time great. My thing is the Hall of Fame should be for all-time greats. Or else if we're not doing that, then all these dudes need to go in, including Romo. All right? So, and I'm cool with that. If they want to come out and say all I'm saying is set the criteria properly for me. If Eli's in and y'all put all these other brothers in, and it's truly the Hall of Fame and not a collection of the all-time greatest players, then I'm truly at peace with that. And he is, and because Eli will be a Hall of Famer. I'm already aware of that. He's a Manning. I think more of the debate is really going to be whether or not he's first ballot or not, right? But if we actually look at this objectively, with the stats, the numbers, the lack of stats and numbers, the lack of awards, and what I saw, fear of the opponent, I feared Donovan McNabb more than I feared Eli. That's just me. But those are my thoughts. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. I think I've made that clear at this point. I'm open to debate, and I think it's a fun debate, though. And Eli's a very, very good guy. I'm not this again. Everything I've said has been straight up to what's happened on the field and the presence of his family and the influence of his father and his brother. But in terms of Eli as a person and character in the sport, he is phenomenal, off the field. Obviously, Walter Payton Man of the Year. So, as the Stephen A. does his little disclaimers, the first take with LeBron all the time. Great parent, community, philanthropist. Eli's all those things too. I'm just saying, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer by my definition of a Hall of Famer. Tell me what your definition of a Hall of Famer is. Love to talk with you guys. I'll be back later. We'll have some more fun debates, some more things I'm somewhat passionate about. So, peace.